Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Activities for People Living at Home with Dementia. We are proud to offer this series with funding from the Area Agency on Aging and the United Way of Tarrant County. These programs are recorded and are made available for viewing through a YouTube channel for future use. I'm your host for today's activities, Martha Brown. It is my pleasure to present to you Amon Carter Museum of American Art spokesperson, Peggy Spear. Peggy is bringing us familiar faces today, and she says there are millions of them in their collection. I can't wait to see which one she brought.
Millions, wow.
Millions and millions.
Peggy, is it millions?
Well, we don't have a million artworks in our collection, but I'll tell you, it is thousands. We have
Thousands.
tens of
Okay.
thousands, maybe even.
It'd be
All right.
tens of thousands. maybe.
So let me get us going.
Well, you have it.
All right. Well, today we're looking at a variety of portraits, and some of them actually are truly familiar faces, and you'll know them when we see them. But we're going to kick it off with probably the most familiar face of the batch.
Oh, yep.
George Bush.
Scott
this-
Gentling.
Yeah, so this is actually on view right now in our special exhibition. They did a number of portraitures, Scott and Stuart, particularly Scott, during their creative years to make money. That was how they made a living, was through their portrait collection or portrait painting. So here we've got, sorry, I'm adjusting so I can see all of your faces. There we go.
This is watercolor?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
looks like
thought
a
it was
photograph.
photo. Yeah, I did too, Martha.
Wow.
I know, it's really, Scott was, once he found out how to use opaque and transparent watercolor, his painting technical ability is amazing. And so this is a painting of a photograph he took
Okay.
Okay.
at Crawford Ranch, right outside Waco, at the Bush's Ranch.
That stuns me.
Yeah, and it's pretty big. I have it written down. It's about 36 by 36 inches. So it's a pretty nice size portrait.
Oh, that's almost readable.
Good morning, Nancy. Good morning, Phil and Paulette.
Hi, friends.
Morning.
Morning, everybody.
We're
Good morning.
here.
Good morning.
There's that smile from Miss Nancy. Yeah.
So today we're talking about portraits on view or in our collection at the museum. And so this is the first one we're hanging out with. And this one is currently on view in the Scott and Stuart Gentling exhibition that just opened in late September. So this particular portrait hung in the White House.
Wow.
Yeah, they were commissioned to paint this portrait. Scott painted it.
Crawford.
So they went down to Waco on the Bush's Ranch and walked around, photographed. They had a really nice relationship with Bush. Neither of the brothers voted for Bush, but they had a nice relationship with him nonetheless. And so this painting this painting did not hang in the White House. Another painting I'm about to show you did. And then both the White House they did 3 paintings on this visit. And the White House and the Bushes passed on purchasing the artwork for themselves, but these artworks all now live in different private collections. So there's this particular portrait of Bush, which is, he's got his casual kind of hunting, weekend wear on in a pretty Texas type of landscape with the limestone. So this was a very casual portrait of the president.
Yeah. So,
And then-
Peggy, could you go back just a second? I don't know if the people who came on late heard, but this is not a photograph. This is a painting. So it's based on a photograph, but
Yes.
it really was. And the other question I had is, what's a paper loan? Low end.
Oh, the 2 different lines. How I normally have an accession number there. This artwork's on loan to us.
On loan. Okay, got it.
Paper, period.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
paper.
got it.
Next line, it's a loan.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah, so this is on loan to us from a private lender. And this one is on loan to us from another private lender. And this was painted as a result of the pictures taken from their visit with the Bush family on their ranch in Crawford. And you can see Bush on the bottom third. He's walking, his back is to the viewer.
Yeah.
And he kind of blends into that limestone landscape.
I wouldn't have seen him if you hadn't mentioned it.
It's so funny. When we were going on tour, the staff was going on tour, I did not see him. And then the curator pointed it out. So I would never have noticed it otherwise either.
So that's a really tall tree.
Yes.
It looks like
And-
it's
like
big.
it.
And you can see it's glazed, it's under glass. So this is a picture of me that I took on my phone. So this is an exit sign that's reflecting. This is not part of the artwork.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Otherwise that green, that would be kind of a funny insertion. You can see some of the reflection. You can see me standing right there. So this is under glass. So I apologize for not the best reproduction, but you just get a gist of this artwork. And this one's pretty large as well. It's 41 by 35. So it's got a nice presence. And this particular one did hang in the White House. This and the third in the series, Sanctuary, which we do not have in this exhibition, but those two hung in the White House. And the Gentlings did 2 Christmas cards for the White House during the presidency. So they had a very nice rapport with the Bush family, despite not being Republican. And they had a history with him ever since he was governor of Texas. So this is a long relationship that continued to grow over time. But yeah, really, you can see how impressive the talent is, the painting
Yeah.
talent.
Yes.
So Scott painted this one, and then the one that we're not seeing that's not in the exhibition, Sanctuary, was painted by Stewart.
Again, this amazes me that it's painted. Wow.
It's really very beautiful.
Mhm.
So these are on loan for the exhibition we have here, celebrating the work of the Getling brothers. And then after the exhibition, they will go back to their lenders.
Okay.
When is that over, Peggy?
I want to say early December, mid-December. It's about a 3-month exhibition.
Cool.
So we're seeing a lot of foot traffic through, which is exciting. A lot of people knew the Gentlings just from being from Fort Worth. So we're seeing friends of the family or just interested visitors. But there are a lot in this particular gallery. This is hung in like a portrait gallery within the exhibition. And there are lots of portraits that these men painted or photographed in their career. So it's a wall of faces you would recognize if you were to walk in, and faces you wouldn't recognize. They did a lot of formal portraiture, but then they also did a lot of informal portraiture of friends and
Okay.
people they knew. So you see the shift in feeling from one type of portrait to the next.
So Nancy, not Nancy, Peggy, sorry. Are these pictures like online somewhere? Do they have like a web page that shows samples of
You
their?
can visit the exhibition website, but not all of these images are photographed. Not all of these images are allowed to be photographed. So you will. I think there's around 170 artworks on view in this exhibition. So whatever is on our website is kind of just a sampling of the approved images that are allowed to be reproduced. Okay, so now we've seen a couple of Bush. We've seen the front and back of Bush. We're moving to another celebrity,
Marlon Brando.
Marlon Brando.
Oh,
So this is,
on his
anyone guess?
it's
Oh,
not
go ahead.
Pence, huh?
Say that again, Yetta?
It's not Pence. Like Pence with a fly on his head.
No,
It's a beetle on his
Touche,
head.
Yetta.
I love that. No.
Beady. A beetle? Yeah, it's a beetle on his
Yeah,
head.
not a Penn's picture. Marlon Brando. And he's on set of the film Apocalypse Now.
What film?
Apocalypse Now.
Apocalypse Now. Okay.
And so this was kind of an interesting research. So I did not know much about the photographer Mary Ellen Mark, and she made a living doing a lot of photograph work for magazines, Vogue, Vanity Fair, things like that. But she also was well known in the kind of the Hollywood world as being the film set photographer. And so she was on so many films, as the photographer, and was really interested in, because she cut her teeth as a street photographer. So she was really interested in capturing kind of that documentary style grit of the street photography, journalistic lens versus the polished portrait that we kind of saw with George Bush. This feels like a very polished portrait.
Yeah.
Whereas this has a little bit in just the grit, kind of less formal feel to it. And she was really interested in that aesthetic.
More of a working man.
Yeah. And then her portrait, and she didn't take just portraits, she did take pictures of sets and, actors working on set. But Marlon Brando hand selected her to come to Apocalypse Now while filming in the Philippines. For a month she was on set, and it was kind of interesting reading about, I don't know, is anyone a big Marlon Brando fan, buff?
Of course.
Before my
Yeah.
time.
Before your time. Oh, my word.
Well, Godfather. I mean, he's in Godfather, right?
Yeah.
He
Mhm.
he had he was a method actor, so he was very, when he was in character, and he was very focused on his work. And so when asked she worked on set with him for a movie called Missouri Breaks. I've not seen it. I hadn't even heard of it. And she kept asking, can I take your photograph? And he kept saying, no. And then on the very last day of filming, he finally allowed her to photograph him working.
Really?
So
He finally gave in.
Yeah, he gave in. She wore him down. And he gained her trust through that movie. So then he requested to have her on Apocalypse Now, and he allowed her to photograph him comfortably.
So did Marlon Brando pick which beetle was on his head?
Well, it's so, I was trying to, there's like a bunch of photographs throughout the series where he has like a dragonfly on his head, like he connected.
Why
with
does
the
he
bugs in
want
the
that
Philippine
sort of
jungle.
thing?
Maybe that's Ringo.
Ringo. the beetle.
Anyway, so
The
they
beetle.
had a really nice relationship, and she had some, she said, I won't use the full word, but she said people like him are mind effers, where he kind of was just messing with her until he finally let her take that photograph. And she said he was a very complex person to work with, but he photographed beautifully. So it was a mutual respect between the two.
Oh, that's good.
Well, that's
The
a nice.
photographs like this were that she took were often used and disseminated through the production companies for press junket, things like that. So that was how these photographs were then being used after she took them. So I think it's a cool portrait. I mean,
It is.
Yeah. It's interesting.
yeah, it's funny.
And funny, yeah.
And the reason he wanted her to come was because, and I've never seen Apocalypse Now. I know that's like against the law, but he was really interested in her capturing the unraveling of his character,
Mm.
Colonel
Really?
Kurtz. So anyway, again, kind of speaking to his idea of method acting. So I'm sure the picture she was taking at the beginning of this visit, where you could kind of see the deterioration of the character by the end. And she knew better not to come to sets on the first week of a film because everything was chaotic. So she would often swoop in when the kinks were ironed out. But she was very well respected in the industry, and both in magazines and in film.
It's been a long time since I watched Apocalypse Now.
Add it to your Netflix queue or whatever. Just,
I don't know. I don't know if it's there or not.
I know, yeah. Well, you've got
Maybe
like
Amazon
9 different
Prime.
platforms.
Peggy, I've never seen it either, so you're not the only one.
Okay. This and Shawshank Redemption. My family gives me such a hard time about not seeing either one of those.
Oh, Shawshank
Shawshank
is
Redemption.
cool.
I've seen that. I love that movie.
I know. And my sister, every Christmas we joke, she just keeps giving me the DVD as like are you going to watch it this year? Are you going to watch it this year? And so now the joke is like, I'm never going to watch it, but she just keeps giving it to me. Okay. So we're moving we've moved from 2 very famous faces to a face we do not know. This is an artwork entitled Attention Company. We might have spent time with this. Hey, Myra, we might have spent time with this artwork in sometime over this past year, but I couldn't remember. So we're spending more time with it again if we haven't. If not, let's meet our friend. So can you tell me what you see here?
He's playing soldier.
Yep. What makes you say that?
The hat and the stick.
Yeah. How old do y'all think he is?
He's probably 6 or 7.
Yeah, young boy.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like he has a lot to work with from the background.
Yeah, so any guesses on what you think that background might be?
It looks like
Don, you go first, and then I don't know who's speaking also.
it looks like a wall where they might put up posters or something, and they wear off over time. I'm not sure it looks like it's indoors or not.
You're right.
Not.
And we can't tell either. That's always something we kind of speculate. You can tell it's wood. You can see kind of the engraving, initials carved in. And it does look like worn advertisements of what we don't know, but there is that almost kind of like a city wall, like if you see scaffolding in a city, or maybe it's inside of a bar or something like that, it's not that this kid would be in a bar, but maybe a restaurant or something like that.
I'd say this young man looks pretty nicely dressed for the period.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk about that, Don. What makes you think he's nicely dressed?
Well, the clothing in general is matches.
It matches. Okay.
But it looks like the vest is a little frayed around the edges.
Yeah.
It looks like there's a hole in one of the sleeves. So by nicely dressed, I mean he has the vest and the the jacket and the pants.
And it probably was a nice outfit at one point.
Yeah.
Well made to start with. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably inherited down from brothers.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're exactly right.
Good point.
Yeah, this is seen a life on other children, brothers, cousins, something before him. But yeah, he's got the patch on his arm, the fraying of the piping, and then
the buttons.
That button.
Buttons will match, yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say, this reproduction does not do justice to how lifelike this painting is in real life. It's life size, so it's as if that little boy would be standing in front of us. I have the dimensions written down. It's 28 by 49 inches, so it has a life size presence, and it's painted in the style trompe-l'oeil. And I might have used this word in the past, but it's a French word that translates to full the eye. And it looks as if we are looking, that this is an actual person standing in front of us. The attention to detail, the crispness of lines, you cannot see the artist's hand at all. Every brush stroke is just as if it were the fabric, the newspaper, the wood. It's impeccable. And this particular artist was known for his ability to remove the artist's hand and make his still life as realistic as possible.
In a different way than George Bush.
Yes. Yeah. The Gentling brothers weren't always painting in a trompe-l'oeil. They were very good at creating realistic, but it was not, we knew we weren't looking at we knew we were looking at a painting. Here it was the goal to make it feel as if you had to do a double take. Is this real life or is this a painting?
Amazing.
Okay, so
Interestingly,
didn't we see this picture when you had a presentation on hats?
yes. Good
I
memory.
remember the hat.
Yeah, that hat. And so we've been doing this painting. It's hung in the galleries right now. So we've been wearing this painting whenever we are in the galleries.
Go Peggy.
Our fashion forward hats. But what's really cool, and again, this picture does not do justice to it at all. If you were to see this, and I think I've told you all this before, it looks like newspaper. You actually feel like there's print on that newspaper as if you went in and hand wrote each little word. What he would do is he would draw, or paint a black line and then go back in with something kind of like a toothpick and would drag it up and down to give it the peaks and pits of what written text or typed text looks like.
Wow.
So you can't actually decipher anything, but it's so realistic when you're in front of it that you're surprised it's not real words.
Very time consuming.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know where it is.
And he created over 250, I want to say 250 still lives over his 17 years of creating. And this is the only person he ever did.
Really?
And so some critics, art historians, the like, comment on how much humanness is actually behind this child because he's so used to painting things that don't have emotion or that don't have a complex side to them. His people kind of don't translate to people the same way, this.
Does anybody speculate as what kind of event he might have been at? It looks like he's almost standing there or as if a parade is going by on a Memorial Day or something like that.
Well, if you look at the date, it's 1878. So it was painted after the Civil War. He was he definitely was not alive during the Civil War. So he's probably heard stories of family or just the legends of soldiers that have been passed down. And so not that he's reenacting anything from the Civil War, but war is still very fresh in Americans' mind. So we don't know if it's a parade. We don't even know if this is a real person. This could have been sketched from a photograph or a live model or something the artist created in his mind. So we don't know anything about this particular person.
Looks very young.
Yeah. And his, because he was a still life artist, things like the newspaper look real. This wooden pole looks real. The brass buttons, the brass buttons that are rounded, kind of hollow in the back. He nails that in texture and in depiction and size and everything. So the details surrounding the boy have a very accurate presentation. It loses a little bit in the face where he seems almost frozen and we can't read much on him as a person.
No emotion at all.
Yeah. But
You ever seen the face of a soldier on parade?
It's like that's what they are.
They don't ever show much.
Yeah.
What an interesting connection, Phil. I have heard a lot of things about this painting, and that is not one of those connections. So thank you for sharing that. All right, we've got one more artwork. And sculpture is always a hard one to show on a screen because this artwork is meant to be viewed in the round. But it's a bronze sculpture and it stands about 28 inches high, 10 inches wide, 6 inches deep. So it's about tabletop size. What are you seeing? What jumps out at you first? What are you thinking?
Looks like a Native American.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Looks
What indications, what attributes on this person make you think that?
the hairstyle.
The
Yeah.
shoes.
His shoes, yes, his moccasins.
Is it a he?
It's a he.
Yeah.
And he's a Sioux, he's an actual person. The artist met him out west. He's a Sioux Indian, and his name I cannot pronounce. I don't know how to pronounce it. But it is, I'll spell it for you, just have it written down. Najiyankte. Najiyankte.
That's pretty
Say it
good.
again, one more time, please.
Spell it or say it.
Spell it again, I'm sorry.
Okay. Najiyankte. It's all one word.
Javante.
Ati or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but that is the man's name. And he was a Sioux. And Calder ended up having there was one other Sioux Indian he met, and his name translated to kills an enemy. I don't have his Sioux name. And so he, through these relationships, was really interested in depicting the American Indian as a dignified man versus the typically traditional depiction of American Indians as the wild savage, the one who needed to be tamed. So this sculpture was not radical, but a very different point of view than what people were used to seeing during this time in history.
I think I've seen this one before someplace. Yeah.
From what I can understand, there are only, I think maybe like 3 versions or 6 versions of this sculpture. RISD has a copy of it, and I can't remember the other museums, but I think only one other museum. The rest of them, I believe, are in private collections, from what I can understand.
Right.
And they have different names. Some of them. See you, Steve.
Bye. See you tomorrow. See you on Friday.
Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
So Peggy?
Yeah.
What kind of, is that a robe that's wrapped around? Because his arms look like they're inside the robe.
You're exactly right. It's it looks like a blanket of some sort.
Blanket, yeah.
It's hard to tell the material, but it could be trade cloth, which is that red felt.
Yeah.
It could be some sort of like tanned hide that he's wrapped around. You're able to see some detailing that might indicate beadwork. Sioux Indians were beaders, so that could be what he's depicting. You can see on the because the band goes around most of the robe, the blanket, and you can see here some etching. That's the artist's signature. He put Calder.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
And it's not the Calder you're thinking of, Alexander Calder. It's the guy who did the mobiles. This is his father. So it's Calder Sr.
Oh.
And then his father was also an artist as well. So he comes
Okay.
from a line of artists.
Did you say what it's made out of?
Bronze.
Bronze, okay.
And so because the title is an American Stoic, if it were made in not bronze, stone might have the same, but the bronze speaks to the content.
Yeah.
I think it would have a totally different feel if it were made from wood.
Yeah.
Or if it were made from clay.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have maybe the same seriousness or weight, literally and figuratively, as other materials. What do you all think?
Yes.
I agree. The bronze really does show that it's, I don't know, we give strength to the character, I guess.
The perfect way to say it. You're exactly right. It gives strength.
I'm going to show my total ignorance here.
Mhm.
Did they start out with a model that's put into a negative and then poured in bronze?
Oh man. Okay.
Huh.
I don't know if this is lost wax or sand cast. I
Yeah.
cannot remember. But essentially, Martha, yes,
Okay.
there are molds made for these. Depending on the cast method,
Mhm.
the artist can go back and add some detail in, or it's harder to add, like some of it is solid bronze through, some of it is hollowed, depending. Casting is one of the most complicated things, the same with like
Yeah.
some photographic processes, where I cannot explain to you all the nuances and differences.
Yeah.
The lost wax often allows the artist to insert more detail, because they can go in and put hand marks on the wax, and then that wax will dissolve when they pour the whole thing. I cannot remember for the life of me what casting method this was.
Okay.
Martha, have you ever been to Williams Square and seen the Mustangs at Williams Square
And
In Las Colinas?
in
yes,
Las
yes,
Colinas?
yes. Uh-huh.
Well, in the building there, they have a small museum with some wildlife sculpture that's done by the same artist that did the horses, but they also have a film
Mhm.
which details how the Mustang sculptures were done,
Ooh,
where they were done, and how they built them a cock and how they increase the size and stuff like that. So if you want to learn about casting, that'd be a good place to go and just learn a little bit about it.
Phil, thank you so much
Thank
for
you much.
that.
Yeah.
So years ago, I created a cheat sheet. There was a time that I blacked out and learned all of this and could never regurgitate it again. So I'm just going to give you the quick paragraph that I wrote.
Okay.
Sand cast method to create sculptures, blah, blah, blah. Lost wax process provided richer details and heavier texturing and allowed the sculptor to make modifications to his model during the production. The sand cast, so like if you can think of sculptures that might have more pieces flying off of it, it allowed for that, or like more minute details. This looks like it was sand cast because it's less detail and it's all one solid base. It doesn't have his
Right.
arm protruding or anything
Right.
like that. It's probably sand wax or sand cast method. And so you can compare, like Remington was really good at doing things in lost wax and sand cast. So you can kind of see the difference between one version of another and the other within the same thing. So yes, there are videos you can Google, you can find educational videos on the differences between, and that Las Colinas one might be on YouTube if you Google it.
I'm so glad I asked. Thank you all.
Oh, really?
When I was in college, I had a class where we were talking about metallurgy, and one of my labs was we had to make a vise out of aluminum, and we did a sand cast. Or I think we did a sand cast on the base, the body, and then we had to mill it out and
Wow.
make it into. But the casting part was really fun.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
Was it frustrating?
No, it was such a simple thing that we were doing that it was pretty straightforward.
And you got a vase out of it.
Yeah, well, a base, the base of it that holds the jaws of the vice.
Oh, a vice. I thought you said vase. Okay.
No, vice.
Vice.
Is in vice.
Yeah.
Okay.
That we still have.
We still have it. Yeah.
Ooh,
It has withstood the test of time.
It has.
yay.
But this particular sculpture, he used the model, the Sioux Indian that he knew, kind of as to represent the whole, which you know how that can be a tricky situation to get yourself in when you're using one person to represent a whole.
Yes.
But and with the title An American Stoic, there's a lot of Greek and Roman sculpture implications tied to this. Stoic is often the philosophy that Greek and Romans used to You had to be stoic to handle confidently change that was coming, or, chaos that was happening. So he's linking this American Indian to traditional tropes in American art history that were strong, figures. And the position he's standing in, you pointed it out, his arms are across his chest, but the stance he's in is called contrapposto and contrapposto, and he's leaning his weight on one leg while the other leg is kind of just there for support, which is a very traditional Greek and Roman sculpture pose. So he was elevating, his goal was to create, he believed if you create the image you want people to see, then people will start buying into what that image is. So he wanted to create an image of an American Indian that was dignified and respectful, so people would see this and treat American Indians that way.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, it was, his intents were good. Looking back on it, looking at, with our 2021 lens on this, kind of using one Indian to represent the whole isn't always the best, but, his intention was to elevate them, or, not even elevate them, give them the respect that they deserve. So art history always looks different, in the rear view mirror, but this was a radical and great thing he was doing in his day.
Beautiful.
So those are our portraits for today. We'll do portraits again, I'm sure, in the coming months. Next week, we are doing leaf peeping because we finally are starting to get fall weather down here, maybe.
What'd you call it? What'd you say?
Leaf peeping.
Leaf keeping.
Yeah, we're gonna look at some pretty trees.
Good.
But yeah, so I hope all of you have a really good week, and I will see
Thank you.
next week.
Thank
too.
you, you too.
Thank
you, Peggy.
Bye, guys.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
So long.
Bye.
Farewell.
Oh, Peggy, what a woman. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Well, let's take a look at what's coming up tomorrow. Just
Okay.
1 second. Nia moving to heal with Emily Corbin. So we're going to do some exercising tomorrow.